Good morning and welcome to the Daily Bible Podcast. My name is William Hemsworth. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Well, we're nearing the conclusion of Matthew chapter 5. We're nearing the conclusion of the Sermon on the Mount. We are in the last paragraph. Today we're going to cover two verses in that last paragraph. And, it's been said that Jesus was countercultural. And in today's passages, I would say in such times that we live in, these passages call us as Christians also to be countercultural. So today we're going to be covering Matthew chapter 5, verses 43 and 44, which say, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies, and pray for those who persecute you." Well, this is different than what the world says. Okay, the world says, if someone hates you, you hate them back. If someone's being mean to you, be mean to them back. If they're persecuting you, persecute them back. Ironically, this is what the Pharisees were kind of talking about as well. So, the term, Jesus says in the beginning of this verse, you've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That term, hate your enemy, does not appear anywhere in the Old Testament. I challenge you, go find it. You will never see it, ever. It's not in the Old Testament, but unfortunately it was a false conclusion by the teachers of the law from their understanding of the word neighbor in Leviticus 19:18. And they were considering the term neighbor to only mean their fellow Jew. So in their mind, you weren't a Jew, they could hate you. But unfortunately, it's not the case. That's not the case. You see later on in Leviticus chapter 19, in verses 33 and 34, God is telling the Israelites to love the Gentile sojourner, to love the Gentile as themselves. So even way back in ancient times, the Pharisees were guilty of a theological term called eisegesis, which is taking a passage of Scripture and twisting it to one's own conclusion. They were guilty of that as well. Okay, so Jesus here shows what the true intent of Leviticus 19:18 is. And that term neighbor extends to one's own enemies. And he talks about this again in Luke chapter 10, verses 29 through 37. So in tomorrow's show, we're going to conclude Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to conclude with more teachings about Jesus in regards to one's neighbor. So I just want to leave you with a couple final thoughts. Okay, Jesus says, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Now, what Jesus is not saying is that if someone is threatening your life, that you should invite them over for dinner with your wife and kids. No, but he's saying that you should pray for them, pray for their conversion, forgive them if necessary. Doesn't mean you need to forget what they did, but you need to forgive them if necessary. As a resurrection people, as Christians, we need to be that light to the world. We need to be different than the world. Jesus is telling us to do that. He's telling us, be different. Show my love to those who are not showing it to others. Be the light to the world. Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. All of us are going through something. There's been people that have done us wrong. Pray for those people. Pray that they come to Christ. Love them as Christ loved us. God bless you guys. Thank you for joining me on this episode of the Daily Bible Podcast. As always, please rate the show. Please share it if you enjoy it. If there's any prayer requests that you have, please let me know on Facebook, Twitter. You can email me at hopewithin18@gmail.com. God bless you guys, and thank you so much for joining me on the episode.